All right, there we go. Now got the memory issue dealt with again. Okay, so I was talking with doing the back and forth online, and I even saw there was a channel where it was somebody who they're obviously a very smart person. This person who I was dealing with online, I have no idea. The canard of white supremacy, and how it causes all this stuff, how it's causing all these things. One of the reason that to blame white supremacy is easy. It's an easy out for white people who are of rather left or liberal leaning. And many times it's done completely out of, I want to genuinely believe, compassion. But really it's done out of simply not doing the heavy lifting, not doing the heavy reading. And also, most importantly, having no experience with, like, they've not sat with the other black people someplace and then had the other black people say what they really think about people who aren't black. This is one of the most important things, that there's no way around this. When you're a white liberal, you have never had white people openly say, or maybe you have and you just are like, derp, I like thinking good things, positive vibes, bro, that you've never dealt with. Like, no, the black people really are people who, like, have this sort of unique level of contempt for other groups when they do. And so I want to make sure to parse this, because I want to go through, when it comes to black males in America, so you have black people, that's about 12% of the population, 12% of the entire American population. You cut that in half, but really it's somewhere about 55% of black Americans are female. So it's really it's really this 4 of 6. So now you're talking about about 4.5, 4.75, something like that. 4.75, 5% of the population. These are now males who are black. Then you cut this again. Only 14 through 40. That's the magic window of real violent crime. Once you get there, you're talking about 2 to 3% of the American population. From there, you're talking about then, because most black male adults are in the middle class, 64%. 51% are not married and don't have children. So half are unmarried men. So married men who have children being just under half of black males, they're probably busy being dads. They're busy being fathers. So you have then this very small number of people. Now you're getting into this 2%, 1 something percent, 1 point something percent of Americans, who then you have to extrapolate the 14 through 40 who commit crime. This is this unbelievably small number of people. This is an unbelievably small number of people. But black Americans commit something like totally bizarre. It's a number I actually end up forgetting because it's so bizarre. But here's the deal. If you get shot in the United States, if somebody shoots you out of malevolence, almost no matter where you live, it's something like 50% of the time it's going to be a black American male, 14 through 40. That's the issue with violent crime. So what this comes down to is that there's this super small sliver of people who are sociopaths and psychopaths. They are literally people who enjoy preying on other people. Otherwise, if this would mean that there would be some very large number of black men. Because remember, this would be almost all young and all old, because you really achieve wealth, as you age, and really you have wealth, and you're usually comfortable around 30 through about 60. Black men typically die between 60 and I think 75 years old on average, something like that. They have just shorter lifespans. There's and short lifespan, naturally short lifespans is an inherited, is, you could find this as an inherited quality, and it has to do with, like, and it is just a real thing. It's one of the various things, like heart disease will run in the family, dying of cancer will run in the family. That people don't deal with that. There's a wide variety of illnesses that are just illnesses, and that's what kills you in your family. This is a really small number of people who are very, 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 very violent. And so there was the period of time where black men were being locked up for just simply selling crack. That ended up, we've long had this understanding of, there's really a lot of these people that they just simply were not the kind of problem you were really looking for. But a lot of people won't deal with, because you are not a person who esteemed violence. It wasn't esteemed in your upbringing. Such terrible things as just beating people up, taking things from them, like actually predating on other people, because you just you enjoy the feeling of predating on other people. If that's not normal to you, you're normal. A lot of white liberals, I think, live in this fantasy world of the TVs and movies where they like to think of themselves as like some badass, Oh yeah, I have tattoos, I'm counterculture, oh, I'm so tough. But you don't think about hurting other people in a way that you actually think about it. You're really thinking, like, I should just whoop this fool's ass and take all his shit. Like, you don't think that way. Like, that was one of the things about me trying to be around kind of tough guys when I was younger. It didn't work, because I just wasn't naturally like, oh yeah, I should gaffle this fool. The thing is, hanging around people who were gaffle-tastic, gaffle-gerp-ass motherfuckers, the very few I knew, they were like that. And this is what the rule is when you're when you're like a black nerd. You try your hardest to not ever get on the bad side of people who you know are fucking dangerous. You try to be cool with them, and yeah, it's my man, yeah, and oh, what's up, blah blah blah, and you don't know why they like you, but when they don't, because they fucking rob you. They fucking make you break out your pockets. They break your friend. Like, they're fine with you, but they're gonna have to break your friend. They just don't like them. They just feel like predating on them. I've had this situation with, like, in San Francisco, there was all kinds of people I knew like this. All kinds of people I grew up with that I'm like, what the fuck? God damn it, this fucking blah blah blah. He's such a fucking dick, and like, and really, when, like, yeah, a famous story in San Francisco of Idris Stelly, who committed suicide by cop. I got to talk to him quite a bit, because he went to my martial arts class. He was one of the students, and so I got to hear what a person who is losing their mind, a black guy who is losing his fucking mind, like, what was going through his mind. Because he wasn't stupid. He was actually very, very, very smart. And in fact, there were actually things that years and years later, I was like, shit, he was kind of right about that. Like, but I won't even get into it. It was like basically anarcho-capitalism, but he was into more this, he was embracing anarcho-syndicalist crapola, and that's a part of what it'll break your brain. And so in his world, everybody was watching him. I didn't know why he thought this. And then there were moments where, like, we would interact in public, and he was so animated and so weird in way, like, he just couldn't keep it low key. He was just too hype all the time, and hype in this way that was just N-word-tastic. Even though he knew how to interact with people, that to not be like that. He knew how. It's just that he would just, he was, something was fucking wrong with him. And he was always thinking that he was going to go to prison. He had this weird fixation on that he was going to be, and one day he would end up in prison. And he was like, why would you think you're going to end up in prison? You're actually really smart. You're trilingual. Like, what the fuck is your issue, bro? And that's always what it was. What is wrong with you? And I can't really make this clear. That, I mean, like, people I met who are norteños, people I met who were in various crews, who they just liked robbing people. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed hurting people. And really, my martial arts teacher, he came out of a culture of violence. And he even one time had to confide in me the feeling it is to know, to actually physically kill somebody with your bare hands. And how it was this intoxicating, it was like drugs, how intoxicating it was. And like how that he had grown up esteeming violence, that was the culture he had been around. These Italian guys and the love of violence, the love of doing violence to people. And at first, it's not that you're fearless. At first, you're a bit fearful, but you slowly lose the fear and the intoxication grows. People who don't get this simply will not listen to criminals who explain this. They won't deal with like the realistic realm of prison psychology, where they're like, this person can't feel remorse. They know what to say to make people think they feel remorse. But if you ask them enough questions and you read their body language, you start to understand this person doesn't really have a capacity for remorse. This is a very small portion of Black American males, 14 through 40, who are increasingly this horrible crime problem. When you look at crime over the color line, blacks dominate this. This idea of the white supremacists are doing this or doing that, there's just no numbers to back up what you're saying. There's simply nothing that you can find metrics to say, here are the white people who like torture, rape, kill, rob, stomp out black people in broad daylight, in the street, where there's entire websites dedicated to what's been caught on security cameras, stuff that people have recorded, the criminals themselves videotaping their friend stomping like some white woman, old white lady, or kicking her dog to death. Nobody will deal with this because this then suddenly opens up this horrible world, the part of the world, the reality that there are people who are evil. This is one of the things that changed so many of the kind of these people who were like sort of into the alt-right, they were into Trump, but finally it was that they really started to confront like, okay, I don't want to hurt people. I'm actually upset with liberals and the Democrats and the Republicans because they won't deal with people who do like to hurt people. They are not being realistic about that. You have to separate people like that. You have to put them someplace and not let them out until they cannot be dangerous anymore. The whole canard of white supremacy, the whole thing is, it's to cover up being really lazy. Fundamentally just lazy. Ethically and morally, and how did that get in here? Ethically and morally and really intellectually simply lazy. The amount, the ferocity and amount of black on everybody crime is shocking. Almost the whole thing of Stop Asian Hate Crimes, this is almost entirely black people doing this to Asians. There's almost no other, this is completely dominated by black on Asian. And nobody can say this out loud because there's always white liberal women who start going, oh, how could you say that? You don't understand. There's white supremacy. And there's always then this endless number of black women who are like, oh, it's the white supremacy. The thing is, though, when you start looking up, like, really, where do people like this get started? They get started committing these crimes against other black people. So black Americans are being predated on by these really, really, really crazy, horrible, soulless black criminals. And nobody will defend them. The white liberals are just sitting back like, whatever. Oh my God, I'm eating sushi. Oh, I'm having cocktails. Oh, I'm luxuriating. I'm doing other things and living in a middle class world. Oh, I have a degree. But in Chicago, almost 100 people a weekend are being shot. This is almost entirely black Americans killing black Americans for the thrill of it, for the simple thrill. All these black conservatives keep saying the same thing. You have to end the welfare state, and you have to stop just giving handouts to dysfunctional families, which are mostly single moms with multiple children. You have to simply make it where there's no benefit for them to poorly structure their household. They have to be, at some point, they have to face the consequences. You have kids you can't take care of. As long as you have because it's its own aspect of the culture. I get handouts. I am literally a person who I won't do the kind of things it takes to raise this child right. We actually even know through child development that having the biological father in the house actually makes the person's brain far more likely to self-discipline and self-correct. That this almost cannot be taught by women to their children and multiple children, and that's also its own trend, is the multiple children issue. Multiple issues from many dads. This is something that early rap music acknowledged. People like KRS-One, Ice Cube, Big Daddy Kane, they all had songs that had something to do. Don't fuck with a bitch from the project. Calling Mr. Welfare. What was it? Naughty by Nature's Ghetto Bastard. Just there's all of these, all these songs and all these songs about, the black dysfunctionality and totally dysfunctional black families, and that this is in always this mom and no dad, and that all came from the Great Society and the welfare state, where they basically were encouraging black women to be on welfare, but they could not have a man in the house. And that this then incentivized a whole part of the culture. And now, and we actually know the numbers on this, because there's really enough information that has been put together many times by black people. Even right after slavery ends, even then, the idea that a woman was that they're fatherless children and all that, even then, the rate of that was not as high as it is now. This is 7 out of 10, and it's probably moving up toward 8 out of 10. Black American children are not going to have a father in the home. Now remember, 51% of men are married with children, or at least married. I know it's at least married. I don't know if married with children, but they're at least married. So that So this is a huge number of black women who are having children out of wedlock, or divorcing the husband, or leaving the husband, or leaving the father of the children, and then raising them on her own. There's nothing like this in the world. There's nothing like this on almost the whole planet. And it's because there's an entire part of the government that incentivizes this behavior. And then the white liberals are always making excuses. Here's really where a part of my mind tends to go is, well, then the white liberals get to become social workers, and they get to administrate benefits to these people. So they get to take care of the black mascots for their cause. But I want to side on, no, it's completely out of total ignorance and a misappropriated compassion. So stop blaming white supremacy, because it's not going to help. It's simply not going to get black people not shot. Saying this over and over and over again is not going to keep black people from shooting each other. And it's that you fundamentally have to not ever incentivize the sociopathic culture that's come along with hardcore and gangster rap music, which I love. This is one of the things. I can tell you an endless list of titles and artists of early hardcore, and it was hardcore hip-hop. That's what we called it, hardcore hip-hop. It wasn't gangster rap. That was this thing that came along with Snoop Dogg and the Chronic, and something that because that was like literally without white people, Snoop and Dre and Death Row and Tupac, they couldn't have gotten as big as they did. That without white fans, you couldn't have the type of sheer global success of these artists. I remember when Scarface was new. Scarface was known as DJ Action. He called himself Scarface in a specific song, and then became known as Scarface. He kept using that term. He wasn't MC Scarface. He was DJ Action. That back on an album that maybe you can find called Grip It on Another Level, when the Ghetto Boys was spelled, I think, Geto Boys. And but Grip It on Another Level. And with Bushwick Bill and the guy Controversy. Hey, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. But it's I just sit back and I'm like, you all have no idea what you're talking about when you're talking about white supremacy. I'm actually fascinated by people who are legitimately like kind of white racists, like, or they had a history like that, to hear like, what do they actually think about black people? This is, you have to really look for them. I mean, you have to really look hard for people who they just despise, they just truly hate all black people. That many of these people, it's like they're like, oh no, I mean, I worked with this one guy, or I knew this one guy, or in prison there was this person and that person that they were fine with. They'll know they'll be into certain rappers inordinately. They'll like certain musicians, or even actors, or certain, they'll even like certain writers or politicians that kind of agree with their relatively conservative views. And they simply are not, they're not hunting down black people. That's like super rare. But to find black people, I all my life in San Francisco, to hear black people, when it's just us who are black, openly say, just show utter contempt for Asians, Jews, white people. It just and I mean, and the one that people don't want to deal with is how much black people really do hate Jews. That one blew my mind to really encounter. Like, it was one time in particular. Damn, I'm so bad at smacking flies. that this one person in particular, that this, he just openly said, you know, to some girl because of something she was wearing, he's like, what, are you a Jew? I don't like Jews. And I was just like, we go to Raoul Wallenberg High School. And then I realized he doesn't know who Raoul Wallenberg was. He has no idea that this is a person who was famous for saving Jews from the Holocaust. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it's just, he just had contempt for Jews. He was just he was a normal Hunter's Point black person. He hated Jews. It just, this was not strange. Women, the moments where I would hear these women just go off and their utter contempt for every other group, that they could go for hours about the Mexicans, the Chinese, oh, the Filipinos, they think they so cute. And I'm just sitting there like, you all work with these people. You're all church black women. You're black women who go to church for hours. And you hold other races in complete and total contempt. And I just couldn't, and I don't get how people don't know about this. And then I just sit back and I'm like, I don't think a lot of white liberals really have that much experience with black people. I think that they really have like these very short-lived, like at work or at school or something, but they've never really been for hours around black people and like really experienced, like, no, black people like will say these things, and that you'll just be kind of amazed at like really, that's how you really think of this person. And then you'll meet people who this is that 51% of black men these are these guys who become middle class. They're that 49% who get married. They don't have a problem with other people. Like, they just don't. And they know that their cousin does, or their brother does, but they also know, like, yeah, and I mean, you wouldn't want to be caught slipping around my brother. Because they know, like, no, my brother or my cousin, yeah, they're kind of shady. They're kind of shisty. Oh yeah, they'll steal things from you. They'll fuck you up. And then, yeah, I just want to leave it at that. Actually, I should just leave it there, because I keep running into this white supremacy canard. And then the other part of this that actually is so irritating is, this is obviously from a perspective of black people, that they're these desperately unsuccessful losers, quasi-retarded animals or something, that just can't get out from under the white man's thumb. Like, this is like people who obviously, like, they don't really understand the Nation of Islam, and really how well the Nation of Islam treats its own people, and how those guys come up from nothing and become something. They really don't seem to get, like, there are black fraternities that meet every year for big fraternal meetings. There's a whole part of Freemasonry that's just black people. These are middle class and successful black people. Black people own cars and houses. Black people have been owning cars and houses since easily the 20s. Black people have been in the middle class since the 1920s. There were black millionaires in the 1890s. And I've just realized, like, not only is it that you meet black people who don't really know a lot about the accomplishments of black people, but then you realize white liberals apparently have no idea that, like, how abnormal violent black people are, and what a tiny sliver of the black population they are, but that of how much fucking crime they commit. And the big one that is the completely unsaid horrible thing is the rape. The sheer amount of rape. And that all feminists know, where there are enclaves of black people or urban centers, there are all these untested rape kits and unsolved rape crimes. And that nobody seems to be that concerned about it. And and you just don't want to deal with what the ramifications are.